Hey everyone, Matt from Close Books here. I feel like this doesn't look right. Let's see. Does it look better? A little bit. Whatever. Hey everyone, Matt from Close Books here. Wanted to give you a little bit of a reading update from my last big book summer video. We are into big book summer. We're far into big book summer now, a bit over a month. Not for me. I started about 3 weeks ago. And as y'all know, I've been reading Jest. I kind of want to give you a reading update about what I think about it so far, how the reading is going, and the other things I've been kind of going back and forth on and reading so far. So my feelings on this book are, I don't know. This book goes through constant waves of being like, this book is unbelievably amazing, like just so good, and then like waves of like, this is horrible. Like there are points where I'm reading this book where I'm like, this might be some of the best writing I've ever read, and like some of the characters are so interesting and compelling, and the voice is so compelling, and I feel like a lot of this must have been David Foster Wallace, knowing that his voice is just so alluring and so compelling, but really like trying to test people's patience. You know, like that's what a lot of this book feels like. It's like a big test of your patience. And I'm 210, 211 pages in right now. And the first 60 pages of this they're rough. They take a lot of getting used to. The first like 30 pages, I was all in. I was like, let's go. This is awesome. I really like the way he's writing. I like his tone of voice. I didn't really love the whole tortured genius, no one understands me, whatever theme in the first chapter or so. But you know, you get over it pretty quick, and I think it, like as you learn more about Hal, the person in that first chapter, you become a little bit more sympathetic towards him. But like the first couple of chapters really, I was like all in, like let's go. But the more you read, the more like DFW is really trying to test your patience. It's like him saying like, I know my writing is really good. How willing are you to go through these slogs, basically, where he's talking about like, he goes way in detail, like maximalizes all this like little minutia that would be like glossed over in another book, right? I mean, it's what he has 1,100 pages for. It's like he can expand all of his thoughts like to the maximum, right? Like there's like a 10-page chapter or whatever on like the architecture of the tennis camp or the tennis institution that they're in. Another chapter that just goes in like detail about like the halfway house, all the buildings that surround it, or the different tattoos that people have in the halfway house. Like it's just like he'll have a thought and there's just no breaks. Like he'll just go and write about it until he feels like he's had enough. The cool part about this, which I do appreciate, is that the little detail, sometimes like he'll slide in a little detail in these big meandering thoughts, these big meandering tirades, not really tirades, but like just thoughts where he keeps going and going, that actually end up being really important for the rest of the book, or like says something about one of the characters or the themes that you may not have picked up on earlier, you know. And I find that really cool, because it's like a challenge, right? You have to pay attention. And like when I say pay attention, I mean I have been reading the shit out of this book, like for lack of a better term. Like I have been really like studying every sentence and every word, and if there's a word in here I don't know, I'll look it up, or I'll go to the wiki. There's a wiki for this book that explains page by page all the words you might not know, or how DFW maybe meant to say it. and I've been really just reading the shit out of this book. Those cool little connections you make from like 20 pages in to 160 pages in. Like, they'll mention a character or a part of the plot that is just, he'll drop it in there, and he kind of like overwhelms you with senses. Like, he'll just really tell you everything that's going on. So like one little plot point that ends up being a little bit more important might just slip right by you because there's so much going on that you're overwhelmed. So I've been really trying to not be overwhelmed by everything and just been studying all the pages and sentences so things don't get lost on me. And that has been paying a lot of dividends. I have been making connections that other people I've talked to who read this book or are reading it with me right now, like my cousin's like, oh, I didn't notice that, I didn't mention that. And those little connections are very rewarding. So I do like that. However, it is certainly a patience tester, and I think purposely so. Another thing I'll say about this book is I like the themes. I like what there's so many things going on in this book. I guess like the theme of like what you give yourself to, like what you give all of your attention to, like your waking human conscience, like where does it go, and how a lot of people's existence kind of like these hubs of going from hub to hub of just trying not to think, basically trying to give yourself fully to something and indulging in something, right? So whether it's drugs, whether it's like competition like tennis, whether it's TV or work, it's just like every activity of your day is a hub to hub of just like losing or literally deloading your mind, deloading your thought process. So that's a really cool, interesting theme, and especially because I know that DFW himself struggled with addiction. But I do like in this book the writing. Like, I think the writing is very alluring. A lot of these parts of this book read kind of like a textbook, or like someone kind of like found, or is like, this is like somebody's history of what's going on in the book, and that's why there's so many footnotes. It's like somebody who has heard the whole story of this family and of the characters, and he's like writing about it in his own account and is like adding footnotes later, or like maybe he found someone else's writing on the plot and he's adding his own little musings into it. It's interesting. It's not something I can really accurately explain very well, but if you read it, you'll know what I mean. I'm also enjoying the different stylistic switch ups. Like, there's like some very Faulkner like almost stream of consciousness like chapters, first person chapters of someone's brain just going, and you learn a lot about the different characters. And there's actually one really important kind of first person paragraphless chapter. You learn a lot about the family, and it's a really cool, very revealing chapter, and it really gets into these characters' frames of mind and how anxious they are and what drives them. I also forgot to mention that there's some really like hilarious moments in this book. One of the things that jumps out to me is there is a chapter where she kind of like predicts FaceTime. He predicts like video calling on the phone, and he says that the reason people don't like it is because like basically they treat it as a normal face-to-face interaction. You have to pretend like you're listening the whole time, and as a result, people start buying like masks to wear, and then because people think they're more attractive than they really are, when they get the mask that looks like them, they're like, this isn't good looking enough to be me. It's kind of this spiral down, which ends up just like circling back around to just phone calls again, regular phone calls. I thought that was very funny. Another thing that's really great about this book are the characters. The characters are very distinct and unique, and they have a lot of personality, and they're likable. That's like, for me, that's like probably the most important part of a book, is just how, I guess not likable, but how believable and how attached you can get to a character. And certainly in this book, there are characters that have a lot of personality and you can get really attached to. So I enjoyed those things about the book. But I'll say, I think when people talk about David Foster Wallace, a lot of the thing that comes up is like how he really just didn't like solipsism. Like, he really wasn't into this self aggrandizing self-centered writing style, and that's why he took a lot of issue with a lot of postmodern writing, which was all about irony and all about like nothing matters, all self-centered style writing. And I certainly see that in the themes of this book, where there are characters who are going through something and they take it upon themselves to survive. And there's this cool part of the book where Hal, with the main character or whatever, one of the protagonists, is talking to his, like, I guess his proteges, and they're like, I don't understand why everyone complains all the time. And he's like, it's not really about the complaining, it's about like the togetherness during the complaining. And I really, really liked that chapter, or that part. And I think there's a lot to say about this book, that a lot of people who are tortured with something are surrounded by people who are going through the same thing, but they're very individualistic about it. Like, they don't want to talk about it to each other, when really a lot of the answer lies in like community and togetherness. And that is a theme I like in this book. However, I feel like a lot of it coming from David Foster Wallace, some of it, it's not always believable. And that might just because I'm early in this book, but I feel like with him, like he often says stuff about being pretentious. And I understand a lot of it is like tongue-in-cheek. Here's this long splaying chapter full of all these unbelievably complex sentence structures and annoying ass words, and then he'll like make a sentence about like how it's annoying that people are pretentious. I understand that there's irony in that. However, I don't think that takes away from, I think a lot of what DFW wants to take away from this book, or at least what he's trying to convey, is how smart he is. I understand that like some people are not gonna be happy that I'm saying that, but I do think it is a big point. It was a big, maybe not conscious, goal of DFW to be like, look how smart I am when he's writing this book. And to me, that rubs off in the wrong way. Just being in academia and how many people there are just so obsessed with being the smartest person in the room. I get a lot of those vibes from this book. And I think, which is fine. He was obviously like a really brilliant guy. Nobody is taking that away from him. And the levels of complexity and like how much he's willing to fill out and be consistent with this world that he's building in this book is obviously takes a really great mind. That being said, it's just, there's such like a little, like this book feels like a really smart Redditor wrote it, like a really self-indulgent, just, I need to use these big fancy words just to show you how smart I am, kind of a person wrote it. And that rubs me the wrong way. And what really hit that boiling point for me was like when he started talking about the brain. And like, I know, whatever, I'm a neuroscientist, I'm gonna be extra sensitive to that kind of stuff, but it would have been fine. Okay, so there's this, where do I even fucking start? There's this building in the book that is based off of a brain, right? It's like, it is supposed to look like a brain. And that's fine, that's cool, I loved it. When he started talking about the corpus callosum, the namesake of this channel, I was like, oh shit, he's talking about the brain, let's go, you know? But like when he started like getting into like the little minutia of the building and like the neuroanatomy of the building is when he started to lose me, because it's like, it's okay, I understand he's not a neuroscientist, you know, I know he's not a neuroanatomist, which that is my trade, I am a neuroanatomist, but like he started using like areas of the brain to describe the architecture that just weren't right. It like just didn't make sense, you know? And it doesn't have anything to do with like his normal like, oh, I'm doing this to be annoying and pretentious on purpose. It was just like he wanted to sound smarter, so he picked particular areas of the brain to fulfill out this image of this building, but the way he described them didn't make like a neuroanatomical sense. Like, and I know that's like splitting hairs, you know, to me it bothers me that he wrote this to sound like he knows more about what he's talking about. But really what it probably is that he has cursory knowledge on a lot of things, which is impressive, but he has cursory knowledge of a lot of things, and he's really trying to stretch how much he actually knows by just trying to sound more complicated, which I understand is nitpicky. I understand it's annoying of me just to even complain about, but it does rub me the wrong way that a big theme of this book is like, I don't want to sound like a big theme of this book is like not being self-centered and like being like an approachable person, but the book in it of itself, the way it is written, is purposely unapproachable. It's purposely like, I am trying to be a smart guy, you know, and to me it just drips with pretension, and I just don't like that. I don't like it. Whatever. But if he's wrong about this one thing, how many of the other things that he muses on not for the sake of being pretentious, but for the sake of building out his world, how much of that stuff is just wrong? It's like he's like filling the gaps of his knowledge of what's actually going on with like fluffy sentence structure and SAT words, you know? That's how I feel, at least. There are also parts and if you're like a DFW fanboy, you're really not gonna like this, and I apologize. But there are parts to me that are borderline problematic about race, and even about like some like maybe some transphobia in there, especially with this character, poor Tony. But there's some problematic views on race and transphobia, and I understand this was in the 90s, but that wasn't that long ago. And especially like when you think about that essay he wrote about like how he needs to teach in standard white English, and like how he was said some potentially problematic things towards his black students. It just rubs me the wrong way. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong, and I would be happy to be wrong about this. And realistically, I'll need to read a lot more to get my full opinion on it. What I'm trying to say is that like it's a mixed bag, this book, which makes sense. It's 1,100 pages. It's not gonna be 1,100 perfect pages, but I'm all over the place with this fucking book, is what I'm trying to say. My cousin seems to be way more into it than I am. I will continue reading it. I'll finish this book and it's fine. But I'm just not sold on it yet, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, the connections that like the plot is also really interesting. Like this whole like Quebec separatist thing is very interesting. I'm like super into that. It's and like the musings kind of between like this guy Steepley and Marath. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. Like how they're kind of like the two philosophers on the hill, like arguing back and forth with each other, but not in a mean way, but they're just kind of like challenging each other's viewpoints. I thought that was fun. Like a lot of this book is just kind of like fun. Like it's certainly it is hilarious. There are parts in this book that just like actually had me laughing, but I'm just not sold on it yet. The themes are cool. The writing is great. The connections you make in the book are amazing. I think my issue with the book so far is DFW, like the position in which he is writing this book, which I understand people aren't gonna love that I'm saying, but I don't know. I think a lot of people feel the same way. Could totally change. I'm fucking 200 pages in the book, so there's still 4/5 of the book to get through. So we'll see how it changes. It's an impressive book so far, but I think really that section on the neuroanatomy kind of, I was feeling this way about different sections in the book, and when he was writing, I'm like, I'm pretty sure this guy is really stretching the amount he actually knows and is filling in those gaps with fancy language. You know, I'm pretty sure he's doing that. And when he got to the neuroanatomy section, I'm like, okay, he's definitely doing that. It just affects the way I read the book, and it really rubs me the wrong way that a lot of this book is like DFW is supposed to be so like anti-solipsism, which I know this is not exactly solipsism, but like it definitely is like, look at me kind of, you know. Whatever. I don't know if that's fair or not. You guys can tell me if that's fair or not. You can tell me if I am being pretentious, which I most likely am, in this tirade. Anyway, the other stuff I'm reading right now is In Search of Lost Time. I'm not much further in it. I kind of fell behind in my Infinite Jest reading because I wasn't super enjoying it, but I'm up to date now. I will finish this book on time, but I am reading more In Search of Lost Time, and that book I am loving. That book I am super into. The musings in that book, to me, just seemed like the musings of a madman, kind of like a really thoughtful, all over the place person. Like it's just so dense with thought, and like it doesn't really follow a coherent structure, but it's just so dense with like human thoughts and emotions that it just feels superhuman. I'm also reading a little bit of poetry, which is new for me, but I'm reading this E.E. Cummings selected poems. I'm like, maybe I'm overselling how much I'm reading it, but I am picking it up and I'm reading a poem every once in a while, and it's been enjoyable. I like it. That's been my big book. Oh, I want to show you a book I got actually. I got this Borges book, Labyrinths. I've been reading a lot online about Borges and his short stories and how he's like a librarian. Fucking really cool. So I've been picking up some of the short stories in here, and wow, these are insane. These are so cool. Some of it is a little bit dense, and there's no way you could just sit here and read through the whole thing in one sitting. Your brain would explode. I mean, it's really, really cool. And the first, I bought this when I was getting my last tattoo. While he was designing it, I went and I walked to a local bookstore. I picked this up and I read the first short story while he was designing the tattoo, and it really blew me away. I haven't read much more in here, but I am really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to getting to more of this, especially when I'm done with Infinite Jest and I have a little bit more time to dedicate to different reading. And the other book I got was definitely different for me, but my uncle keeps recommending it to me, and it is, I think it's a pretty well-known book. It is not fiction. Holy shit, right? Like, who is this guy? It's The History of Western Philosophy, which I know is like a really famous book. But it's cool because I feel like I can just kind of pick up a chapter and read about a philosopher. You know, I'm not a big philosophy head. It's just kind of cool that I can kind of pick it up and read a little bit more about like these different thinkers throughout history, which is cool. I'm a little bit regretful that this is only Western philosophy. I would like to read a little bit more about like Eastern philosophy and maybe things like that. It'd be cool, but you know, it's a cool little start. Whatever. Who the fuck is? Yeah, that is my big book summer update. Infinite Jest. Right now I am leaning towards liking this book and appreciating it for what it is. Once you go along the ride of like, this guy just wants to really expand out every thought he's ever had by a million, then it's fun. It's good fun. I'm just not sold on the message yet. On the message presenter, I should say. I'm not sold on it yet. I think that's fair, right? I'm only 200 pages in. You can't blame me so much. But I'll give you guys more updates as the weeks go on. I hope you're having a good you hear that sound? I hope you're having a good start to your week. If you are in America, happy 4th of July weekend, right? Yeah, happy 4th of July weekend. I hope you get some good time off work. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and I hope you have a good upcoming weekend. And I mean, the next book presumably, the next video presumably I make is probably like at the halfway point in this book. We'll see. I don't know. Videos will be a little bit harder to plan these days just because my dissertation is in 5 weeks from now. And life is just insane until then. So, whatever. Okay. When I have nothing to say, I think that's the sign that I have to end the video. So, I'm gonna end the video. I'll talk to you guys later. If you want to subscribe, feel free to do that. No pressure. If you are enjoying the videos, let me know. More importantly, just comment something. I like reading the comments. It's harder. I've been getting a lot more of them lately. It's harder to respond to all of them, but I promise I read all of them. So thanks again. I will talk to y'all another time. Peace.